Welcome, everybody, to our Wednesday evening special event, our traditional special event every Wednesday evening orchestral event for the 39th limited edition of the Giornate del Cinema Muto Pordenone Silent Film Festival. Before we go on to our discussion, I'm happy to present to you an introduction to the Greek National Film Archive.
The Greek Film Archive was established in 1963 when, by royal decree, it became La Cinémathèque de Grèce, the Greek Film Archive, a foundation whose mission was to preserve the filmic cultural heritage of Greece, as well as big collection of foreign films given by distributors. The origins of this project was a cinema club in which, as Henri Langlois has written, the young at the time film directors such as Michael Kakoyannis, Nikos Koundouros, and Grigoris Grigoriou came for a breath of fresh air. There was a special relationship and a deep friendship between the founder of the Greek Cinematheque, Aglaia Mitropoulou, and Henri Langlois. Henri Langlois became her mentor, and she started collecting Greek films, which up until then were thrown to the garbage. In 1984, the Greek Film Archive joined the FIAF as a permanent member and later played a decisive role in the formation of the Association of European Cinematheques. At this moment, the Greek Film Archive is housed in a renovated old cinema, which has become a landmark of a new era in archiving, and it has two winter cinemas and an open-air one. The Greek Film Archive has a triple mission. One, to serve as a film museum. It has a collection of many pre-cinematic apparatuses, magic lanterns, and other devices. It has cameras, and it has many posters. These are housed in a separate space in the new building of LACE. Its second mission is to act as a depot, as a laboratory for the collection of Greek films. And the third is to act as a databases for the digitized film which it is managing. The Greek collection of the Cinematheque is unique because it has preserved the only surviving silent films. Starting from 1923, in what has been called The Adventures of Villar, there are fragments of a comedy showing Greek comedian Sfakianakis shot in location around Athens. It has also got a Greek rural drama, Mountain Adventure, Astero, which was found in Cinémathèque Française. It is an excellent film shot in location in the Peloponnese and starring many important theater actors. And it also has what has been called the first realist film of Greek cinema, Social Corruption. The Greek Film Archive is the unique foundation for the preservation of film heritage. However, the Greek Film Archive does not have the dépôt légal, but through voluntary gifts has a very big collection both of silent films and of Tokis. Its aim is to continue a rigorous preservation and digitization program, which will also include some color films. The situation is complex because the collections and the films are widely dispersed. There are the collection of the Greek Film Archive and the Greek Film Center, which are housed in the property of the Greek Film Archive, a laboratory in Agia Paraskevy. But there are many films in the hands of the heirs and in the hands of producers or other entrepreneurs who manage to buy the copies. Our aim is to continue our program of preservation and restoration and digitization by securing funds both from state and private donors. A fine example both of the international collaboration, of which the Greek Film Archive has been a pioneer in the Greek context, is the preservation of Les Apaches d'Athènes, the Apaches of Athens, which were found 4 years ago in the French Cinematheque. Under the aegis and the patronage of Kostas Gavras, there was an appeal to Stavros Niarchos Foundation, which provided a generous grant for the preservation and digitization of this film. This was also helped with the very good collaboration that we had with Cinémathèque Française and with the Immagine Ritrovato. So this is the way we hope we will proceed in preserving many other Greek films which we hope you would like to watch.
Happy to. Thank you very much, Maria, who I'm very happy to be able to introduce right now. So with us this evening, we have Maria Komninos from the Greek Film Archive.
I'm very happy for the way you have received and promoted our new baby, Les Apaches. I think you have really given it a great reception, and I'm grateful.
Thank you very much for saying that. I'd also like to introduce Ioannis Tselikas of the Hellenic Music Center.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you for the invitation.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. And Céline Ruivo, joining us from Paris. Good evening, Céline. Can you hear us okay? Great. I'm not sure if the, could you speak, okay, with Céline, I thought I would start with you, if possible, to ask you about the discovery of the film in the Cinémathèque Française.
Oh, yes. Well, this film was discovered, I believe, 6 years ago. Well, it wasn't exactly a discovery, actually. What happened is that we had a from an audiovisual archive located in La Rochelle in France. So it was a small audiovisual archive, and they couldn't keep any nitrates, so they didn't know what they had, so they decided to give it to us. So it was a donation. That means we can do whatever we want with the materials. They didn't want to deal with nitrates. And then, there was a title on the film, but it was a French title called Le Prince des Gueux. Le Prince des Gueux means the prince of the lower people, les Gueux. It was far from the Apaches of Athens, which is closer to the Greek title also. So we had a little moment in between the donation and the identification at Cinémathèque Française, and thanks to an archivist called Iris Deniozou, she made the research to identify that this film was in fact Les Apaches d'Athènes, the Apaches of Athens, directed by the Dimitrios Gaziades. So, it's more or less a discovery made out of identification. And this is obviously the only, I mean, we try to do research in the FIAF network, but this is the only nitrate print that survived on this film. Yeah, that's the story.
And was this film found at the same time as Astero, the film that Maria also mentioned, which I believe was also from a French archive?
Much earlier. Astero was found much earlier, was discovered, I think, the same you there.
Okay. There's a bit of a feedback loop, so hopefully we can try to control that. And so once you found the film, tell us about the process that led you to contact then Athens and where the print went from there.
The film, once we discovered it, was this long-lost operetta, and Kostas Gavras learned about it. We were very excited, and we tried to find a grant in order to proceed to its restoration and digitization. Fortunately, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, after a long process, agreed to give a generous donation, and so our friends in the French decided to go ahead and to send the copy to Imaginary Trovato in Bologna. And of course, there is the big story that Ioannis Tselikas will say about the music. So there is one long and happy adventure, the restoration from the nitrate copy, which had many problems. You just saw some fragments in the little film we showed, which was taken care by a team from the Greek Film Archive. There was Elektra Venaki, from Cinémathèque Française, the miraculous and Céline Ruivo, who really fell in love with that film and did a lot for this. And for the music, the Center of Greek Music, which with Ioannis Tselikas and Ioannis Sabrovalakis, who together with Elektra Venaki, I think made a miracle.
Ioannis, I really want to get into that, but before we do, it's my understanding that when the film was released in France, it was released silent. Is this correct? That the sound discs were used for the Greek release, but in the French release it was silent.
My hypothesis, and from research about Greek cinemas in Cairo, where there was a big Greek diaspora, was that with the method of bad synchronization, sometimes it worked, sometimes it did not, there were always discs to accompany the film.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm under the impression, Céline will correct me, that this version was also screened in France. But Céline can tell us the French story.
Céline, you're muted. You have to take it off of mute. Sorry. We can't hear. So, yeah. No, not yet. Sorry. We'll get Céline back. Pas encore. On the bottom lower left of the screen, perhaps? If you can click on that. I'm not sure if Marco can do it for you. I don't think so. While we wait for Céline to come back, Ioannis, do you want to talk about how? So you had no soundtrack. The operetta itself. What is the situation with a full score for the operetta?
Okay. the operetta was written almost 9 years before the film. It was first performed on 1921, and it was a huge success. Actually, there is another Greek operetta by another composer, and there are the two plays that they are performed every year since then. They are really successful. So the first thing I did actually was to see this amazing film, and actually I was shocked with the images and the pictures from old Athens and all these beautiful things you just saw. The next, with Hellenic Music Center, actually, we are two collaborators. I had to try to find the score, which was not so difficult because the actual score of the operetta was in the archive of the Greek National Opera. So I had the manuscript, and actually we could see a picture if you wish, if Marco can help us. I have a picture of the score, of the full score of the operetta. And what I did is I just copied this is the last page actually, and you can see on the bottom the signature of the composer, Nikos Hatziapostolou, and that is the fine dell'operetta, the end, at 25 of July 1921. And actually, these are the last notes you just heard at the end of the movie. And I copied the score. I make all the necessary. I corrected all the mistakes, and I made like a new edition of the original score. And that was actually the easy part, to prepare the score that Hatziapostolou wrote, the composer. While I was doing that, Ioannis Abrovalakis, my collaborator, was searching all over the world to try to see what recordings there are from, not only from the movie, but from the same period of the operetta and the movie, that is 1920s and 1930s. He found many, many recordings, but not the original soundtrack for the movie. So after I had written the original score, I was working very close with Elektra Venaki, and she actually was a kind of a director of the new movie, and she gave me guidelines on how to adapt the original music to the movie. So what I did is I divided, I chopped actually the score into several, actually hundreds of small themes and musical bites, let's say, and I created a bank with musical themes. And we tried with Elektra to see which theme fits better to each frame or in every scene. It was actually like a collage, a musical collage. And we also tried to see if there would be an entire song or entire number, as we call it in operetta, that could fit particularly in a certain scene, in a complete scene. As you have seen in the movie, there are some such places that you can hear an entire song. And for certain scenes, we chose to use the recordings that Ioannis Abrovalakis found, the old recordings. And I think they worked perfectly, and you get the sense of the old sound, the scratching of the LP, of this gramophone actually discs, and probably you could have a sense of how the music was sounded that time as well. And then we created this. The new score is 400 pages. Actually, I have here. This is the entire score that the conductor used for the recording, for this recording. It's Tassos Simeonidis, a very good friend, and the orchestra of the Greek Radio Orchestra. this is in general terms the way I worked. I had to find I had to match the musical theme, the feeling actually of each musical theme with the frame and the every scene. And later I had to develop it actually as a composer and to make it fit to the particular frames. Besides the score, the original score from Hadjiapostoulou, there was some new additions that he used for the film. He wrote 3 new songs, and there are 2 pictures of the piano editions. They're beautiful cover pages, and if you like, we could share it with our audience. Yes, this is like a sweet dream. This is the cover page of the piano score of the song, and actually it says about the film, because it was first sung. It says from Wilhelmina Kyriakou, from the transfer of the operetta in film from the Apachides of Athinon, Les Apachides ton, and music by Hadjiapostoulou. And there is another picture. It's just a second. It's another very beautiful picture with the eyes. It's the scene that Le Prince, yes, what eyes? It is Timatia in Greek. It is when she falls off the horse and they look at each other. And this is the place we chose to place this particular song. This is in general terms what we did with music. The research is still continues actually, because we would like to find the actual discs, the gramophone discs they were using, and it is very it's a coincidence, or I don't know what to say, because 2 days before the premiere in Athens last February, we had a similar discussion on the radio. Actually, Ioannis Sabrovalakis was online on the air actually with Maria, and 5 minutes after this radio discussion, there was one from the audience called the radio stations, and he contacted us because he had another recording which it was the closest we could find from the soundtrack. It was a potpourri, let's say, with themes from the movie. But we couldn't use it, but we could have an idea of how the orchestra sounded for this soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Maria, you were going to say.
Yes, so that's interesting because you made it clear in your introduction before the film that this is not the original music which is lost, but is in a sense a new creation based on the operetta and some songs. So in a sense is like a tradition, a kind of treason, but a wonderful treason.
This is the only Greek film, it's my understanding, that was made with synchronized discs. Was that because by 1930 it was considered an outmoded system, and so nobody continued it, or were there other reasons?
Yes, there was a disaster because this company that produced Les Apaches hoped that it would be able to find an actual sound system, but it was very expensive. So it patented this system, which I hope Céline will come and tell us more about it. But then there is one more operetta which has been lost, called Kiss Me Maritza, which I think it was done with the same system. But then a lot of foreign sound films invaded the Greek market, and that was the end. I mean, it really was also the end of Greek production.
Right. Okay, I understand. Céline, can you say something about the soundtrack that? No, okay. It's good. The video is off, but the microphone is off as well. So let's see.
Can we get her on?
Well, I'm sure we will. I know how frustrating this is for Céline in particular, even more than for everybody else. So I'm sorry, but
I could,
yes.
If you want to discuss about music in general for the operetta, I don't know if it was clear that Hadjiapostolou makes a clear distinction between the social classes of that appear in the movie. We have the poor people. We have all these guys that they are trying to find some money to get their life on, and we have the new aristocracy that is getting bigger and bigger in Athens of the beginning of the 20th century. And on one hand, we have the use of Greek traditional music themes and rebetiko, which is a kind of Greek blues music for the poor people. And we have all these European rhythms, such as tango, the valse, the foxtrot, the habanera types of rhythms for the rich people. And one other interesting thing is that whenever we have love scenes, we have something that combines these two opposites, and this is the Italian and French operatic style, which is kind of universal, and they sing with these love themes to each other, the duets or the arias, the monologues, let's say. And I think that was very interesting to take it from the operetta and use it in the film as well.
And one of the things I find extraordinary about the film is just how present music is throughout it. The number of scenes where we see the bands playing, the number of scenes where we're aware of music, not just hearing it, but seeing it, I think is really quite extraordinary in this film.
And this, I have to mention that a very good friend, Dimitrios Gaziades, helped us a lot. We chose to use recordings of this era from Germany and actually from jazz, from the jazz scene of Germany, of Berlin, in order to cover this particular scenes on the party, of the big party, where you see the saxophone players, the banjos, the drums. And we used another recording for the very early scene in the taverna, in the Greek restaurant, where they sing.
The Retsina song.
The Retsina, exactly.
Yes, which I enjoyed very much.
If I can make a little comment, Ioannis spoke about rebetiko, but I think that the tradition of the operetta was very much different. I mean, the popular classes were not supposed to use that idiom. It comes much later, I think, in the musical scene. So the songs of the taverna, which are supposed to be the popular songs, are of a different idiom.
We have a comment, actually, or perhaps
Yes.
a question from the public here, saying that the Rembetiko orchestra is, you see a Rembetiko orchestra in the film, in addition to a jazz orchestra. And so the question is, the jazz style, idiom, as Maria is saying, is reflected in the reconstruction, but not the Rembetiko style. So I wondered if you could talk a bit about that and also explain to the audience what the Rembetiko style actually is.
Okay, there are several phases of the rebetiko. The rebetiko, it's as I told before for the audience that they are not so familiar with Greek music, it's kind of the music of the lower classes, and actually it is a blending from music of the Greek coast of the east side, let's say from Turkey, which was partly Greek on that time, and there is a blending with European music as well, and with Greek folk music, traditional music. It was the music that you could hear in the big ports of Greece, like Athens, Piraeus. Actually, Piraeus is the port of Athens, the port of Syros, and in Syros, it's where actually the Greek the new Rebetiko is born. The only place we hear actually the traditional orchestra was this recording in the taverna scene. Hadjiapostolou, though, uses the symphony orchestra. Actually, this is the typical orchestra that everybody was using in the operetta. So we do not get the sound of the bouzouki, which is the traditional Rebetiko instrument, or the guitar, but we get the musical scales and the musical let's say the musical frame and the musical idea of it. It is what many composers have done on the past, that they were using in kind of symphonic music traditional elements. And he actually, one other important factor that he uses the Greek, let's say in general element, is the rhythm as well. He uses Greek folk dance type rhythms in much of the music that accompany the poor people.
Which fits very well with the whole title of the film, the Apache of Athens. That kind of music clearly is speaking also to this milieu, lower class milieu, which is so wonderfully drawn out in the film, both on a comic level, of course, with the protagonist's two friends, but also just in the views of the Plaka, all these places in Athens that we know very well as visitors to the city. We're used to it being completely full of tourists, full of people standing outside of restaurants trying to grab us inside and wondering whether any real Greek people actually live there anymore. And so to see it that way, to see these views up to the Acropolis, to see the Tower of the Four Winds, all of these things are really quite extraordinary. And so I wonder, Maria, perhaps if you could talk a bit about Gaziades' use of the city, his insistence on bringing the cameras out into the streets and filming daily life.
Yes, I think that poverty sometimes is the mother of invention, like neorealism, which became so important because the studios were destroyed. Similarly, Gaziades, who had trained in Germany, he had also worked as assistant to Wilhelm Pamst, had the very interesting idea, since he could not build stages and studio that would be up to the standards of the operetta, to go and shoot on location. And he was sensitive to make use of poverty and popular quarters. Greece in 1922, it had received a huge number of Orthodox Greek refugees from Asia Minor, and you can see in these squalid places, that's where they were living. I mean, and so we have something we did not expect we would see on a film which is light comedy and operetta. So his style, I would say, is to make a very interesting hybrid between operetta and sentimental comedy, but with a camera which is sensitive to a social reality, that in a sense does not develop in this scenario, because, okay, you know, we have happy ends. He goes with so lovely, a little bit like Paulette Goddard, Titica, everything in the end, there is happy end, not just happy end. But the camera watches, the camera records that there is a city with terrible poverty.
Yes,
So
indeed.
his style, to speak a little also about this other rural adventure, Astero, which we found in Cinémathèque Française and was restored in 35 in a very, very nice restoration, is to shoot a lot on location. He uses the idioms and the genres, the European genres, but he puts very much what he calls authentic images of Greece, which are not folkloric, but almost realist. So that's what I find that maybe is the signature of Gaziades, this mixture, these bold mixtures of genres, making films that are good entertainment, but on the other hand, sharp observation of the social reality, be it rural, be it urban.
And from what I understand, though, this wasn't the first time that he took his cameras out onto the streets. He had worked, he had worked, as you said, in Germany. He also worked back in Greece when he came back after the war. My understanding is, and was actively. He had absorbed, shall we say, some of the techniques of German cinema and brought it, and that would include location shooting even before the Apaches of Athens.
Sure. The problem is that most of his films are lost, so we can only go with these two, which were great successes also. That is Astero and Les Apaches. For the rest, we know that there was an operette, as I say, which is lost, and there was a melodrama, which also was lost. Suppose a story of underground, of Greek underground bandits and all that, called Love and the Sea, but it's lost.
I want, of course, to talk about the restoration in particular, but before we do, I'm curious about the premiere of both the operetta and of the film, because operettas you think of normally as being very frou-frou, very frivolous, shall we say, but my understanding is in both the operetta and the film, although there are differences in the plot, that grounding in the fact that it's grounded in a working class milieu is something exceptional for especially in operettas at that time. Would you agree with that, Ioannis?
Yes, actually, operetta in Greece appeared in 1914. This is the year that we have the first Greek operetta, and that happened by composer that unfortunately he's unknown today, but he had a great career in Italy. His name is Spiros Samaras. He had his operas presented in La Scala, in the Opera of Rome, in other theaters. And he turned back in Greece, and he understood that the audience could not follow the real operas. He tried to educate the audience, and he thought that he used the operetta as a medium, which has more comical elements and themes from everyday life. Unfortunately, he died 3 years after he died in 1917. But then Hadjiapostolou appeared on the Greek scene, and actually Les Apaches is one of his first operettas. So he had a very successful beginning. He was actually a singer in the church. He was actually let's say a kind of pop musician of the time as well. So he knew all the several styles of everyday music for the middle and lower class. And the other thing I would like to mention is that the operetta was the venue that all Athenians would see every week. They would go to the opera. They wouldn't go to the theater. They wouldn't go to the concerts. They wouldn't go to the actual opera. They would go to operetta. That was the most common way of entertainment. And probably actually later they could go to a restaurant, something like that. But we had an amount of 1,000 Greek operettas written from 1914 until 1940, let's say. Then, of course, film came on scene and operetta disappeared. So people would go again and again and again, and we see Les Apaches, as I told you before, every year for many, many performances. And as you very well said, that the plot is the same, the story is the same, but actually the scenario is completely different. And that was another huge difficulty we had to focus regarding how music fit the film, because actually what happened, this probably could be understood for the operatic or operatic audience, is that Gaziades shot all the scenes of the operettas that were actually spoken. He filmed only very few singing scenes from the operetta. As you remember, operetta is divided between singing parts and spoken parts, in contrast with opera, where the entire play is set to music. So Gaziades actually shot all these spoken scenes, and we had to reinvent the music for that.
Very interesting. Really interesting. Maria, I'm wondering, the film came out at a moment of deep crisis in Greek politics, in the Greek social structure. I was wondering, when it premiered, what the reception was, for example, among the intellectuals. Do we have much information on this?
Have information, and I would say it was a mixed reception, because I have from the research we've done, this system of synchronization between discs and film, in some cinemas it was successful, and in some others it was not. So a lot of critics, especially I think it was more successful in some cinemas in Cairo, where they must have very good, installations. It was divided. Some people, some critics were very positive. Some others said, no, it has a lot of technical problems. So I think it was successful with the audience, but the experts were divided.
Very interesting. I'm happy to say that unfortunately there's very little written in English on the film, on the production company, but fortunately there is going to be in a forthcoming issue of Moving Image, an article by Vasiliki Tsitsopoulou, lecturer in modern Greek at Indiana University in Bloomington. So when that issue of Moving Images is out there, I think we're going to be able to learn even more about the film and about the production and the atmosphere at the time, as well as more about the production company, which stopped making films, I believe, in 1935.
We are also preparing with Céline for the Journal of Film Preservation and Artity.
Fantastic. That's good. The more information, the better.
Yes.
The more scholarship, the better. That's very good to hear, especially given how little we have outside of the Greek language about Greek silent film. So that's very good news to hear indeed. Céline, unfortunately, the connection isn't very good for her. She said that she just loved the film. I must say that the film was brought to me by Céline, who was just so excited by it and was wanting to see it in Pordenone. Of course, at that time, we were hoping to do it live. Now that's not possible, but it was great to see it here. And as Céline says, it was a beautiful restoration to do with the Greek Film Archive. So Maria, I'd like you indeed to address issues of restoration that you had with the film.
Well, The restoration it was possible because we worked with the best laboratory, Imaginary Trovato, and with experts. Céline was crucial. Elena Tamacaro, Deputy Director of Imaginary Trovato, and of course Electra Vernacchi. I came in because I was excited. I wanted to see how well it was, or bad. Unfortunately, it was too well. But I think it was a really fantastic work that was done. It was a lesson, of course, for us. We're really looking forward to do more restoration and really also expand our own knowledge to the Greek laboratories.
I'm assuming that there's no indications of the original Greek intertitles. That the only thing that exists are the French, even in document form. Is that correct?
Yes, that was lost, and we had the big discussion. Shall we go for Greek intertitles? We could reconstruct them. I said, no, let's keep the original. At least this is the original intertitles, and let's go just for translations, be it Greek or be it English. I wanted to keep some authentic thing in this film. Already the music is totally devised, so okay, I opted for the French intertitles.
No, I think that was the right thing to do, being true to the artifact. Going back to the social element of the film, because my knowledge of Greek silent cinema really isn't very good at all, I have to admit. I'm wondering about those characters, the two comic duo, the comic duo. My understanding is that they continued also as a sort of character actor pair. Is that correct? In later films?
No. Actually,
okay.
the one, as Ioannis will tell us, the one of them, Prineas, is the librettist. Although he looks as if he's a real actor, a seasoned actor, he's not. The one who looks like Louis de Funès is really the librettist. The other, I don't know. Such a great amount of Greek films have been lost that we don't know. But Ioannis can tell us a bit about Prineas.
Well, the only thing I would like to add is that Prineas, in the film, he played the poor guy, Karkaletsos, but he was playing also in the premiere of the operetta, and he was doing Paralis, and he was singing the rich guy. That's, I think, very interesting. And as you said, as we said before, the libretto, actually, the scenario to the movie is completely different from the libretto. And Prineas continued to write other type of operettas, but this duet actually has some influences from the Greek shadow puppet theater, which is called Karagiozis. And you have all these comic elements and these guys who are poor, and they are trying always to do something to find a small work or some money. So that comes from this old tradition of the folk shadow puppet theater, and it continues. There are some elements in future operettas, but as I told you, out of the 1,000 operettas that they were written, only 5 or 10 of them they are performed, and they have been restored in musical terms. So there is a lot of work to be done in the musical side of the operetta as well. Besides the lost films, we have all these lost operettas. Actually, we have there are many operettas that we have the scores, but we're trying to find the people to revive them and bring them on stage. This is the purpose actually of Hellenic Music Center that we have founded, to found rare music and present it again.
And the problem of lost operettas is not just something that's a problem in Greece, but throughout all operetta lands, shall we say. There are a vast number of operettas that have been lost or just simply not performed in the United States, certainly in Britain as well. I'm sure the same thing is true in France. Apropos of the differences between the film and the operetta, I was particularly struck when I was doing a little bit of research on my own that the rich man in the operetta it's clear that he was in America, he made his money in America, and then came back to Greece and is sort of lording it over everyone. But in the film, that's not there. It doesn't say anything about any time that he had spent in America. And I thought that was an interesting comment on whether they didn't want to ridicule the people coming back to Greece from America and decided not to put it in the film. What's your what do you think is the reason for that, Maria?
Look, I don't think there is an obvious sociological explanation. What is clear in comparing the two, the operetta and the adaptation, is that the film adaptation is much more conservative in terms of the sexual relationships. In the operetta, the prince has got relationship with Titika, which is not the case in the film. The two girls are chaste in the film. So I'm under the impression that because of the great crisis, both economic and the crisis with the refugees, that there is a shift towards more puritanical modes for the film. That is, in order to have this appeal to a big audience, Gaziades and Prineas have opted for a more, let's say, puritanical version, I would say. No Hays Code existing, but there was a feeling about the social reality and what society would tolerate.
And did that continue into the early sound era in Greek film? I mean, how long would you say that it continued in that puritanical vein, and how connected was that to the political situation?
Look, there is a big problem what happened with the sound in Greece. As I told before, once the Doug film went bankrupt, there were few serious film companies left, and really film production only started during the occupation, and so again the mood was not, of course, for showing films that were emancipated or showed the different relationship between the sexes. So it was a really Greek production started with the studios around the late 40s to 50s. Then there were Greek studios that got really the state-of-the-art installations and started making films that could stand and appeal to the big audiences. And from mid-50s to 60s, mid-60s was the golden era of the Greek film, popular Greek film, and with some exceptions of auteurs.
Sure. I think that's actually, we've just about reached the 1 hour mark, and that's a very good place to end. Maria, thank you very much for joining us. Ioannis, thank you very much for joining us. Céline, I know you're watching from remotely, and it was lovely to have you connect with us even for just a brief period of time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for bringing this lovely film, really delightful film to Pordenone, and we hope to see you and more Greek films in the near future.
We thank you very much, and I thank also Ioannis and Céline for their participation in this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night, and see you tomorrow evening for the Papst film Abwege. Good night.
Definitely. Thank you.